What's up, everybody? Nate here from Out of the Basement, bringing you a brand new action figure review. Today, from Star Wars The Black Series, we are taking a look at the Target exclusive Commander APPO. And this is an exciting day here in the basement because this is the first updated clone trooper that I personally have in my collection. And I think most people are getting APPO before the standard plain white one. But this is that new 2023 tweaked clone trooper body. It's got some pretty major differences to it. I'm going to run down everything that's different about this body and give a comparison to the 2020 clone trooper body just to show you how different the two are. Some parts remain the same, but for the most part this is actually a pretty significant update, so I'm very excited to have this figure here. We do have the return of the window box so you can see the figure in all of its glory. Yes, it's in a Kenobi box, and yeah, is it really Commander APPO? It's kind of just, 501st Army Builder if you ask me. But however they gotta label it to give it to us, I really don't care. The box is just gonna go in the garbage anyways. And we got a nice look at the mural here, which is great with the Jedi Temple up there in the background. APPO also has a unique bio. If you want to pause it, go ahead and read it now. He's the 14th figure in the Kenobi subline. We have a nice larger image of the mural art, and then we also have the barcode down at the bottom here. So let's not waste a whole lot of time. We're going to go ahead and just get this guy open and take a look at those accessories first things first, and then we'll move on to the actual figure. So for APPO, we do get two accessories that we've seen quite a few times before. We have the smaller clone trooper blaster here, now cast in a gray plastic. This is the same sculpt that we've seen before. Nothing new or different about it. And we have that same long blaster rifle that we've also seen a bunch before, now this time in gray plastic. They both look really nice. No complaints, although of course I do miss the days of a nice little dry brush on these. And we also have a removable helmet on this figure, so that is the first real major update. The 2020 clones beforehand did not have removable helmets unless they were ARC troopers. So it is nice to finally get a regular clone that has a removable helmet. And you can see they've also updated it to include the black line on this removable helmet, and it does look pretty good. We do unfortunately have the whole weathering issues where the blue paint is chipped but the armor is completely clean. Something that's just a minor annoyance to us here on the channel. But I think with all of the really nice updates to this figure, I'm definitely willing to look past it this time around. We have some really nice clean silver paint for the mouth grill, a little bit more there down on the little breathing holes. We've got the blue stripes on the helmet. Look at that glorious black line. Everything looks really nice, and even though this isn't totally back to the live action look, the inclusion of the black line just does so much to help it look more in line with the rest of the clones that we already have. I would say the visor is still a little too pinched to be completely theatrical, so once again, as far as this figure goes, it's definitely like a hybrid between animation and live action. And the helmet does fit on nice and snug. You can get a little bit of chin poking out there, but that's only if you're really looking for it. You tilt the head like this and it's completely fine. So now let's go ahead and just take a look at Commander APPO. Alright, and here is APPO out of the packaging, looking absolutely amazing. I wanted to start out with this pose for one thing, and look at that knee pad right there. They are not glued on this figure anymore, so they are free floating. They can actually be put in their correct position, so now we get much better looking crouched poses here because of that. It was literally such a simple fix, and I'm glad that they did address it because that was one of the major flaws with that original 2020 clone body. We do also get some other upgrades as well, such as the shoulder pads. They are on an O-ring system now and are much larger than the original ones, so we get a little bit of a more bulky presence here. The chest armor is also an overlay piece, which is more in line with the 2020 Stormtrooper. They've also slightly tweaked the elbows, so there is no more pinching on the actual elbow pad armor. There's also some more updates to go along with this figure as well, which we will discuss now once I take this figure right off the stand. Alright, so here is APPO helmet on right out of the packaging, and since we did take a look at those details, we'll go ahead and pop that off, and we'll start out with the unhelmeted head here. And this is a really nice looking head, definitely not quite as detailed as some of the ARC Troopers or Captain Rex. I mainly think it's how white the eyes are on this figure. It almost has like a slight pre-photoreal look to it, but I still think it does look pretty solid. You know, you can see the clone, the Timorison likeness. There's some scarring on the forehead, and some of the wrinkles are like photorealed in as well. As you can see, it has a case of the shiny face syndrome, pretty typical for a Black Series figure, but they did a good job. This head has been around for a while, but we haven't gotten it painted before. The hair looks really nice and clean, and I really don't have too many complaints other than it's shiny and just looks slightly less detailed compared to some of the other clones we've seen in the past. But now with that addition here, take a look at those shoulder pads. They are nice and big and updated. And like I mentioned, the chest armor piece here is a free floating overlay as well. And here is just a quick side-by-side with a 2020 clone. This is the 212 version, and I painted the black line in myself. But you can see these shoulder pads are much larger on this new version. And with them being on the O-ring system, they kind of flare out a little bit more like they normally do, and just gives it a better, more bulkier proportion. Same thing with that chest overlay as well. I think the knee pads in general are also updated. However, the elbow pads do appear to be the same. And I think the legs are the same, but we do also have a significant upgrade on this figure. And that is that we have a left-hand trigger finger, first time for a clone trooper, and it has a vertical hinge. Spoilers for articulation, but that is also something we did not have on the old 2020 figure. You can see that's just a grip hand. But it's still just so crazy to me how just a couple of those minor tweaks can make the figure look so drastically different, even though they are almost pretty much the exact same. And even though I think this figure is definitely an overall win, one major flaw that I have with the details outside of the chipping with the clean armor is unfortunately the shade of blue. Now, the shade of blue for a 501st Trooper has always been a problem in the Black Series. There are very few figures that actually match. So there's always been slight variations throughout all of the ranks, but this APPO here is probably the biggest difference we've seen so far in the line. The shade of blue here is really, really light. And unfortunately, when you stack it up with other 501st Troopers, here's the archive version. You can see we don't really have a match at all. It looks a little bit more subtle on camera, but in person you can definitely notice that it is a pretty drastic difference. And then here's the Jet Trooper. You can see again, not even close. We've got 5s, again, not even close, much darker blue. And even on Rex here, the shoulder pad actually matches pretty nicely, but the actual blue on the armor definitely a lot darker. So I think a lot of the other figures do a good job matching because they typically stick to a darker blue, but for whatever reason on APPO here they decided to go light blue, and so he really just sticks out even against this APPO custom figure. So even though this does have potential to be an army builder, you're going to have to section off a little bit of a segment for them to kind of be on their own, because they don't really mix as well as other figures do into the rest of the 501st due to this light blue. However, if this is your entry into 501st Army building, then you'll probably have no problems at all. But for collectors like myself who have been in it for a long time, you know, we want our 501st Troopers to match, so that is a pretty big flaw to me that this one just misses the mark so hard. I definitely think they should have went with a darker blue to match the other figures better. So with that in mind, I don't really want to do a whole articulation breakdown for this figure because it is largely the same, but we will run through a couple quick things here, such as the removable helmet articulation for the head. Can look up a decent amount, can look down pretty far. The helmet still gives you decent amounts of range there, so it doesn't really get in the way. The unmasked head has that double neck peg, so the articulation is still pretty much about the same, helmet on or off. With the shoulders and the O-ring hair system, you know, they move together or independently, however you'd like to move them, but this just gets out of the way so easily. We don't have any of the problems like we did with the other shoulder pads on the original clone, whereas that armor piece had to fold up over the armor. This one just lets the arm move out, no problems at all. Whereas on the original 2020 body, the shoulder pad bunched up like that a lot, so you oftentimes had to kind of fudge it and get it around, and this just looks so much more natural. We do also have a new articulation point. The bicep swivel is back. However, we do not have elbow swivel anymore. So kind of a little bit of a trade-off, but again, doesn't really make a big difference whether you put it down at the elbow or whether you put it up at the bicep, at least in my opinion. This figure does still have butterfly joints too, of course, don't want to forget that. And like I mentioned earlier, the updated trigger finger hand on the left arm has a vertical hinge here as well. So double vertical hinges on APPO. And that means if you have two blasters, that means you can finally get some really nice two-handed dual wielding poses with this updated version of the body. Crunch is about the same between the two, and all the other points of articulation are the same on this figure, although again, like I mentioned here, we have the floating knee pad now, so you can move it up, down, wherever you'd like to put it to make it look much better for shooting poses, crouching poses, pretty much any pose where you want that knee bent. This figure is a 100% upgrade in that regard. And I do also like what they did here with the elbow, where now I feel like that rubber piece there tucks in nice and deep and doesn't actually get caught in the joint like it used to. So we shouldn't have any problems with that getting clipped up there. So while the articulation is about the same, having the bicep swivel instead of the elbow swivel is certainly sure to make some people happy. For me, I could take it either way. But the big W here is the alternate left arm with the trigger finger and the vertical hinges. So that is just a really great update here. And so now let's go ahead and we'll do some comparisons. I'll show him side by side next to a bunch of different clone troopers here so you can see just how he scales. And starting out, we've got that 2/12/2020 clone and the Archive 501st. And now I think it's definitely safe to say with this new 2023 clone body, we definitely have the best clone in terms of articulation and actual scaling, because before the 2020, a little too small, but you got great articulation, and the classic version, horrible articulation, but definitely has a nice size to it. Now I think this is a good middle ground here with this 2023 body. You get all that great articulation, and it definitely looks a lot bulkier and actually kind of has the more of a guy in armor look to it. Then we've got Captain Rex and the 501st Jetpack Trooper. Lastly, for the Black Series, we have the Target exclusive Clone Wars Anakin and ARC Trooper 5s. And finally, with this very nice custom APPO from Vale's Toy Store. So yeah, with all of that in mind, it is definitely safe to say that I think this new Commander APPO figure is awesome. The updated 2023 clone body is a really nice upgrade to what we had before. Now I think this is definitely one of the best clone bodies we have seen yet in the line. There's really only two major flaws with this figure in particular. One is that really light shade of blue that unfortunately doesn't really match any of the other members of the 501st we have already in the Black Series. And two, it is a Target exclusive. So you know it's probably going to be a little bit of a challenge to get this one, especially since a lot of people are going to want to army build this guy up. Otherwise, though, this figure is absolutely fantastic. Great details, really nice articulation. The updated knee pads are one of the best things that we've had in the line in a while. So I am really just over the moon with this updated clone figure. And I can't wait to see what other different paint app variations we get of these in the future. I hope we get to see some more variety soon. And I can't wait to get some plain white clones that are coming just right around the corner. So yeah, there's my review. I would definitely recommend picking this figure up if you see it out in the wild. Absolutely grab it. You don't want to miss this one. And if you enjoyed my review, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you are new. We're always talking about Star Wars The Black Series here on the channel. And a big shout out and special thank you to all of our current channel members. Your continued support is truly appreciated. And thank you to everyone else out there for watching. I'm Nate from Out of the Basement, and I will see you next time.